Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right now we sit in a world with lots of opportunity. Globalization is a very important part of business these days, where all of a sudden businesses in one country can connect with others all across the world, bringing together their products and services to create something for the greater good of civilization. However, sitting here in Canada, we see this opportunity with the Trans-Pacific Partnership that has arose. However, we aren't taking advantage of it right now, and negotiations are coming to a standstill. Right now, we see on-side government with our resolution today that Canada should actively pursue the Trans-Pacific Partnership with negotiations and its completion. Now, we define this resolution today, Canada, of course, being the Canadian government, representing its people, and of course the Trans-Pacific Partnership as a drafted agreement, currently in one of its stages, closer to its final stage, which would allow this reduced tariffs and other trade agreements between many of these trans-Pacific countries. As well, we define these negotiations and completion as restarting these negotiations with an allowance for some changes and some revisions in order to bring it to this final step of what all these countries could accept as the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, how would we do this today? Firstly, Mr. Speaker, we would want to begin these discussions immediately. Other partners, of course, as we've seen, have slowed down right now with these discussions, and large players such as the United States are not happy with its presidential candidates on both sides dismissing the effectiveness of the current state of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So we see that we would want to begin by encouraging these negotiations amongst countries right again, to once again revise the deal, and in doing so, we would look at creating a dispute settlement system so that there would be a level playing field amongst the foreign investors as well as the local communities when there are these issues at stake. In doing so, we would make sure that there is equal say of those local communities and domestic governments against those foreign investors, contrary to the current system where we see these foreign investors would have the upper hand. But also with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, we would request that all of these countries would be respecting workers' rights up to a certain international standard, so that we could see the standard applied in terms of wages and workers' rights, so that these people would be able to work on a fair basis across these international players. But also with Canada itself, we of course would have these industries which would no doubt lose out, as we are already aware of, and in doing so, Canada would provide payouts to some of these industries in the form of subsidies, transition subsidies, and by doing so we would initially be paying these organizations and industries affected these initial subsidies of the production, but only for a limited time, as we would be subsidizing any equipment, materials, or knowledge that they would need in order to transition their industries into something more innovative that would thrive within this Trans-Pacific Partnership. And that limited time would last over the first 10 years, eventually until a point where we aren't subsidizing them any longer and they have innovated and become that new, better version of the old industry. But on-side government today, we do have a few points for you in our constructive case, and my partner is too, talking about international labor standards and also this level playing field, which I have discussed in our implementation. But also I have one point today of our shifting economy. Now, of course, part of the fear of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, as I mentioned, is that we will be losing opportunities for jobs and losing workers in these vulnerable industries, such as the manufacturing industries, agricultural industries, and so forth. However, right now, when we look at these industries that are at risk, whether it be dairy farmers or people in the automobile industries, we see that many of these jobs are in fact low pay. Is that my last one?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry, okay. And they are actually little help to maintaining momentum in our economy. So with our implementation today, we are actually helping this transition and bringing upon this international opportunity for building our knowledge economy. Markets that require skilled services are of course international, and Canada can be providing now those skilled services and products which require these skilled workers and more innovation. And by doing so, we can showcase Canada's system of education and our ability to develop these industries and become a global player with these higher paying, higher benefit industries to both the workers and Canada as a whole. We would be growing our economy with good, sustainable jobs that we will see benefit us far into the future, rather than focusing on these finite resources and other manufacturing industries, which will of course die out as time moves on. This will incentivize higher education and people to join these new and better industries, and therefore we will see the improvement of design, industries, and labs in our education system, and for these reasons we will, of course, have a better Canada within our social and societal and economic systems, and with this, we beg to propose. Oh, sorry, was that Grace? I thought that was, I had Grace after that.
You never get
What? JDC is like a sharp cutoff
It is a sharp cake.
I don't know.
I'm thinking Grace again.
of
Okay.
0.01
You
seconds.
silly guy.
You silly you. Do you want to use the podium?
I would love
That's not a
to.
podium, it's a lectern.
Did you just call
Words
it?
mean what we say them mean, not as you define language.
Did you call it a lectern?
Lectern.
And actually, I found that words oftentimes don't mean what they're said to mean. It's mean as society defines them, insofar as
Yes, but you're not
equality and
society.
equity.
Lectern.
Should we debate that instead?
You can be the chair. Now just
That
sit there as
be
a
the
chair.
resolution? Can someone count how often I play with my hands or something, just to like,
Oh, do you need
You'll
a
see
timer?
it.
I
Or
can
you
time
time
it,
it.
I can time myself, I
Okay.
have it up here, okay. Mr. Speaker, so the resolution we have before the House today is, be it resolved that Canada actively pursue TPP negotiations and completion. So to start off, I'm going to go into a little bit of a refutation on what we heard from the Prime Minister of side government and just kind of run through his points, each and every point, and his implementation plan, just so that we can kind of clarify something or kind of point out the glaring holes that we see on side opposition. So to start off, they said in their implementation that to pursue TPP negotiations, they will begin negotiations. They didn't say how they're going to actually begin these negotiations. They didn't say where these negotiations were going to take place, how long they were going to negotiate for, who's going to be part of the negotiation process, are we bringing in any experts from trade, apart from equal say of everyone involved in the partnership. We didn't really hear much about the negotiations, other than that they were going to begin. So, as much as that does go with exactly what the resolution says, we're left with quite a few questions on side opposition, and we don't really see a clear implementation thus far. So then, side government, went on to say that they would provide equal say of everyone being a part of this partnership, and that they want a level playing field. So our question on side opposition is, who is going to enforce that this is a level playing field? Who's going to make sure that we are actually hearing from this big country that's a part of the partnership and a smaller country that's a part of the partnership? Who's to say that each and every person is going to get the exact same amount of say? Because, Mr. Speaker, we're not naive on side opposition. We know that the powerful players of this partnership are going to end up with more of a say than those smaller countries and those smaller areas that are trying to work with these bigger countries. So that's another problem that we see on side opposition. In terms of, we also talked about, or side of government also talked about how they would develop an international standard for how they would treat workers and how at each country part of this partnership would have to abide by. But again, who's determining this international standard? Who's enforcing this international standard? How can we make sure that country A is upholding this, that country B is upholding this? And also, what if country A already is doing what they see fit in terms of their standards and how they're treating their workers, and they match those international standards? Or maybe they're already above those international standards. Does this mean they can slack off? Say, hey, maybe we're doing too much. Maybe we can just go down a level and now start treating our workers the way everyone else a part of this partnership is, and then that would work for them? I don't know, Mr. Speaker, it seems a little suspicious over on side opposition. So, lastly, the last refutation before I get into our constructive case is that the side opposition, or side government talked about how Canada would be losing this industry, losing this industry, losing this industry, but it's okay, we're creating innovative jobs to supply each and every single person that's lost their job. We'll create enough innovative jobs that there's not going to be an effect on unemployment. But Mr. Speaker, it's not realistic. There are tens of thousands of people in Canada working in these industries. And to say that by creating innovative positions will offset the balance, by creating a subsidy will transition these industries into more innovative industries, that doesn't work either. another question, sorry to ask so many questions to you, Side Government, but where is the subsidy coming from? You just drop this in our laps and we don't know where this is coming from. We don't really know the details on that either. So now to get into our constructive case with the last minute that I have. The reason that we don't see that we should pursue this any further or complete this partnership would be that the benefits would not be equally divided. Although you do say that you admire and you want equal say of everyone, we admire that. But like I said, we're not naive. In a perfect world, everyone would be heard. Every single voice in that partnership would get an equal say. But realistically, Mr. Speaker, that's not going to happen, and the benefits are not going to be equally divided among each country that's a part of this. So although some countries may benefit immensely from this Trans-Pacific Partnership, we're still looking at countries that are going to lose out from being a part of this, and on Canada, we don't want to lose out. We don't want to be one of those countries that is not going to be successful when this happens. So to recap, although I didn't really get into much of my second point, my partner will speak more to that. But on top of the refutation that I provided on Side Government, the constructive points that we came up with are that the benefits are not going to be equally divided. We're deviating from the true meaning of a trade agreement, and also there's an imbalance. There will be an imbalance of foreign investment when looking at this resolution, and if we go forward with this partnership. So, Mr. Speaker, that's why this resolution shall fall. Thank you.
Chair calls on,
You call on the chair.
well, yeah, the chair is pushing him up. It's like a push-up bra, but it's a chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the Leader of the Opposition. We heard that the Leader of the Opposition was very confused by the Prime Minister's speech. We did not hear a lot of opposition to the plan, however, so I'm hoping this will make my job in refutation fairly easy. It will primarily consist of addressing questions brought on by the opposition. I will then reiterate the Prime Minister's first point on economic development and international expansion, and then I will expand on our 2 points of international labor standards and leveling the playing field. Mr. Speaker, the opposition brought up the point that we have not discussed a time, location, and whether or not there will be equal say in negotiations. Just so they know, a partnership such as the TPP does need all sides to be in agreement. So there will be an equal agreement from all parties in order for it to pass through. The time and location, it could be in Canada, it could be in the States, it could be in any of the other Pacific areas. They're trying to throw you off course, Mr. Speaker. This is not what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss the partnerships and its implications. More importantly, they brought up the point of more innovation and did not think that it would be possible. Mr. Speaker, it won't be easy to transfer from some of the manufacturing industries into more innovative industries. But this is where our implementation plan comes in. And this touches on our third point of leveling the playing field, or rather, economic development. And Mr. Speaker, through this agreement, it will be harder for industries such as the auto industry to continue. And the jobs will be lost to foreign countries. But we're saying that's all right, because initially, the government will provide subsidies to these industries to offset the loss. Furthermore, these subsidies will lessen over time and will decrease the funding as these industries and the companies in the industries transition to a more innovative role. For example, if they're now choosing to invest in green technology, software development, the production of services. These are the types of industries that we would like to pursue, Mr. Speaker, in developing a knowledge economy. It may not be easy, and it may not be cheap. Yes, the taxpayers will have to pay for this, but we're not at a tax debate, and so I will not cover where the money will be coming from. But this, Mr. Speaker, is the knowledge economy that we should be pursuing, whether or not there is a tax burden, and whether or not it takes a significant amount of time. On the second point of international labor standards, just a second, sir. We will be imposing minimum standards through the TPP, and if they're not accepted, then the TPP will not go through. This will be something that we will remain firm on. Yes?
Mr. Speaker, what's the side government's actual plan in terms of implementation?
The actual plan of implementation. For the third time, Mr. Speaker, for sustaining our weak industries, we'll be providing a subsidy, and then we'll be providing funding that decreases over time as they will be transitioning into a new sector, and we will be pursuing negotiations with the TPP to impose everything that we've talked about previously. To continue on with the second point. By imposing minimum regulations in the TPP, this is how we'll be raising the international standard, Mr. Speaker. And lastly, to level the playing field, we need to have a dispute resolution mechanism that's fair for local and for foreign investors, not prioritizing one over the other. For these three reasons, Mr. Speaker, this resolution shall and must stand.
5 minutes really is not enough time.
No, I was on like 2 points.
Yeah, I didn't.
I
And then it was in the last minute.
Points in mine.
I didn't even see it yet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'd like to start off by refuting some of the points that side government made. So the very first one being that they want to address the rights of workers as per certain international standards to a certain extent. So my question here again is, what about the union agreements that are in place? So there is a specific plan that is being set up by the unions, and every employee has to adhere to that plan to stay in the union. So how will the side government address unions and make sure that they have their say as well in implementing their plan? Also, the side government mentioned about the point that they have a fear about losing job opportunities. So this clearly shifts the entire debate to the opposition or to our side, because they themselves don't stand on their point that they already have a delusion in their mind that there is going to be a chance, there's going to be a fair chance that they lose out on job opportunities if they go for these innovative ideas. So this defeats the purpose of the debate. Again, let's another point which, sure.
Mr. Speaker, does the opposition not believe that Canada should be pursuing a knowledge economy?
Again, Mr. Speaker, the point here is definitely about knowledge economy. But if it is affecting the current stakeholders, if it is affecting the people who are currently in workplace, that will disrupt the entire equilibrium system of economy. Again, our point as opposition, the second point which I would like to mention, is the variance in regulatory standards between different countries. So if a trade agreement comes into place and if countries have different regulatory standards, for example, if there is a trade agreement between Canada and Mexico. So Mexico might have entirely different regulatory standards than Canada. So for workers who are a part of this trade agreement, naturally, as the entire population is, if they go on to work in Canada, they will have different work policies. And for Canadian workers who work in Mexico, they'll have different regulatory standards. And they'll have to adhere to those standards. So if we put in place these trade deals, we are actually defeating the purpose of, or the actual purpose of these trade agreements. So the real purpose of tariff reductions is not being addressed here. The side government's plan actually deals with a completely different issue, that is bringing in, or that is giving more job opportunities to people in those, in other countries. But again, there is a greater variance in the regulatory standards of different countries. I'd like to substantiate my point by giving another example of FPI. So that is for portfolio investment. So I'd like to give up some basics here. So for example, if a Canadian company invests some money in Mexico, it will increase the gross domestic product of Mexico. Again, that depends, or that is subject to the amount of investment that is made. So if it is a capital investment, there is going to be a massive increase in the GDP of Mexico. But in contrast, if we talk about Canada, Canadians are also going to get some sort of revenues from that investment, and those revenues will increase the gross national product of Canada. But that gross national product, or GNP's increase in Canada, is not sufficient enough in comparison to the increase in GDP. Yes, the government has a point about subsidies, but those subsidies will not be enough to address the gap, the fundamental gap between the GDP and the GNP of both the nations. So again, the side government is not clear in terms of their implementation and on how they will effectively bring these policies into effect, addressing the union needs as well as the needs of the people. I'm good. Okay.
You still have a minute.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
what I meant.
You have someone, yeah.
It's
So-
protected time.
So as opposition here, we would like to come up with, I'd like to address, or I'd like to summarize the entire debate here by mentioning two key points of the opposition. That is, the benefits are not equally divided between these trade agreements. So the countries that are a part of this agreement won't receive equal benefits, in other words. Again, it gives unfair advantage to countries that have a bigger say or who hold a big chunk in these agreements. And there will be a variance in regulatory standards between different countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Push the red button. Let me stop the recording.
I'm gonna open that.
I'm just looking for like a big red button.
I don't know where the button is, Howard.
It's on the other side of the back from where you're standing.
Oh.
I feel like our entire debate was just reputation and no constructive.
Okay,